She mocked the human's nunchucks. 1 minute later, her armor lay in pieces. The crowd roared with anticipation as Princess Kalia strode confidently into the fighting pit. Metal panels gleamed beneath her feet, reflecting the blue glow emanating from the veins of her dark battle armor. The royal insignia of House Taraxis adorned her breastplate, a symbol feared throughout 3 star systems. Her emerald skin caught the light as she tossed her silvery hair over her shoulder, scanning the arena with eyes the color of polished jade. The assembled Taraxians fell silent as she raised one armored hand. "My loyal subjects," she called out, her voice carrying across the arena. "Today, I demonstrate once again why the Taraxian Empire stands supreme among the stars." The crowd erupted in cheers, their collective voice like thunder in the enclosed space. Kalia allowed herself a small smile before turning toward the entrance, where her opponent would emerge. When the human male finally stepped into the arena, Kalia couldn't help but laugh. He was tall for his species, with broad shoulders and a face that might have been considered handsome by human standards. But it wasn't his appearance that amused her. It was his weapon. In his hands, he held what appeared to be 2 wooden sticks connected by a short chain. "This is the champion of Earth," she called out mockingly. "A man with sticks on a string." The human didn't respond immediately. His dark clothing, simple and unadorned, contrasted sharply with her elaborate armor. His expression remained neutral, almost bored, as he walked to the center of the arena. "I didn't ask for this fight," he said quietly, his voice somehow carrying despite its low volume. "I'm just a diplomatic envoy. Let me return to my ship, and we can discuss the treaty as planned." Kalia circled him, her armor humming with power. "The mighty Earth Confederation sends a diplomat who carries toys as weapons? Perhaps your people aren't the warriors we've heard tales of." The human, Chad Russell, according to the announcement, sighed deeply. "Princess, there's no need for this. I came in peace." "Peace?" Kalia spat the word. "Your kind spreads across the galaxy like a plague, claiming territories that rightfully belong to more advanced civilizations. Today, my people will see the truth about humans, that you're nothing special." The crowd's jeers grew louder, and Kalia could see Chad glancing around, noting the hostility in every face. She'd orchestrated this perfectly. The human delegation had arrived expecting negotiations, not combat. But Taraxian tradition allowed the royal family to challenge any foreign dignitary to prove their worth before discussions could begin. Most visitors knew this and brought champions. The humans, in their arrogance or ignorance, had not. "You really think you can defeat me with those pathetic sticks, human man?" She laughed, drawing her ceremonial blade, a curved sword that glowed with the same blue energy as her armor. Chad looked at his nunchaku, then back at her. "Last chance, princess. I'm not here to fight." "Too bad," she replied, her smile predatory. "Because I am." Without warning, she lunged forward, her blade slicing through the air where Chad's head had been a moment before. But the human had already moved, stepping aside with surprising grace. What happened next occurred so quickly that many in the audience would later argue about the sequence of events. Chad's wooden weapons became a blur as he spun them around his body. The princess attacked again and again, each strike meeting only air or the spinning wooden sticks. Kalia grew frustrated. Her armor enhanced her strength and speed, yet she couldn't land a single blow. Worse, the human hadn't even attempted to strike her. He was merely defending, making her look increasingly foolish. "Fight back, coward," she snarled, launching a particularly vicious attack. Chad finally obliged. The nunchaku suddenly changed direction, wrapping around her sword arm. Before she could react, he pulled, throwing her off balance. As she stumbled, his weapon struck with precision, not at her body, but at specific points on her armor. 1 minute after the fight began, a loud crack echoed through the arena. Blue energy sparked wildly as hairline fractures appeared across Kalia's breastplate. Another strike, and the fractures spread. A third, and her pauldron shattered completely. Piece by piece, her supposedly impenetrable armor cracked and fell away, leaving her kneeling in the center of the arena in her undersuit, surrounded by fragments of metal and fading blue light. The silence in the arena was absolute. Chad stood over her, nunchaku hanging loosely at his side. "I studied Taraxian battle armor before I came. The power nodes are your weakness. hit them in the right sequence and the whole system fails. Kalea looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time without contempt. What she saw wasn't triumph or mockery, but a quiet dignity that made her breath catch. "How?" she began. "I told you," he said, extending his hand to help her up. "I'm a diplomat. We do our homework." As she took his hand, something shifted in the air between them, something neither had anticipated. "The council demands an explanation for this." "Humiliation," hissed Counselor Drex, his scaled fingers tapping in impatient rhythm on the polished stone table. Kalea stood before the Taraxian High Council, her chin raised despite the shame burning in her chest. She changed into a formal robe that bore her family's insignia, but nothing could disguise the blow to her pride. "I underestimated the human," she admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. "It won't happen again." "Indeed it won't," said High Counselor Merrick, his ancient face creased with disapproval. "Because you've jeopardized our entire negotiation position. The humans now know our battle armor can be defeated with primitive weapons." "Not primitive," Kalia corrected before she could stop herself. "Precisely applied. There's a difference." The council chamber fell silent, 7 pairs of eyes narrowing at her defense of the humans' tactics. "Perhaps the princess has developed an appreciation for our visitors," suggested Counselor Vex, her voice dripping with insinuation. Kalia's hands clenched beneath the table. "I merely state facts. Underestimating them further would be foolish." High Counselor Merrick studied her for a long moment before sighing. "Regardless, we must salvage these negotiations. The Earth Confederation controls resources we need, and they've established outposts too close to our borders for comfort." "What would you have me do?" Kalia asked. "You created this mess," Merrick replied. "You will fix it. The human, Russell, has requested a private audience with you. Granted. Learn what he wants, what he knows about us. Charm him if necessary." Kalia bristled at the implication but nodded stiffly. "As you command." Chad Russell sat in the gardens of the Taraxian Royal Palace, seemingly at ease despite being surrounded by alien flora that could probably kill him in a dozen different ways. Some of the carnivorous plants tracked his movements, their colorful blooms turning to follow him like hungry sentinels. He was examining a particularly vibrant blue flower when Kalia approached. "That one's poisonous," she said by way of greeting. "A single pollen grain can paralyze a full-grown Taraxian." Chad withdrew his hand with a rueful smile. "Thanks for the warning. I was just admiring the color. Reminds me of Earth's oceans." Kalia took a seat on the bench opposite him, maintaining a formal distance. "You requested this meeting. Speak your purpose." "Direct. I appreciate that." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I want to understand why you forced that fight. Your people contacted Earth seeking an alliance, yet your first action was to try to humiliate our representative." "It is Taraxian custom to test the mettle of potential allies," she replied automatically. "Bullshit," Chad said, the translator rendering his crude Earth expression perfectly. "Your intelligence on humans is too good for you not to know we'd find that provocative. You wanted a fight." Kalia's jaw tightened. "Perhaps I did." "Why?" She hadn't expected such directness, nor the genuine curiosity in his eyes. "Most species approach Taraxians with either fear or fawning respect. Your kind expands too quickly," she finally said. "In 3 generations, you've gone from a single planet to dozens of colonies. You make alliances with species we've spent centuries trying to subjugate. You disrupt the natural order." Chad nodded slowly. "And you thought beating me in combat would what? Slow human expansion?" "I thought demonstrating Taraxian superiority would send a message." "Instead, I sent one," he observed without arrogance. "So where does that leave us?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Kalia studied him more carefully now, the way he sat comfortably in alien surroundings. Alert but not fearful, the way his eyes missed nothing. "It leaves us at an impasse," she admitted. "My council still wants this alliance, despite my miscalculation." "And what do you want, princess?" The question caught her off guard. What did she want? The alliance made strategic sense, but something deeper gnawed at her, something she wasn't ready to examine too closely. I want to understand, she said finally, how did you learn to exploit the weaknesses in our armor? Our design specifications are among our most guarded secrets. Chad smiled slightly. Not guarded well enough, apparently. But if it makes you feel better, I didn't hack your systems or steal your plans. Then how? I watched recordings of Taraxian warriors in battle, analyzed the energy fluctuations when your armor took damage, mapped the patterns. He shrugged. Basic observation. You learned all that from recordings? Kalia couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Humans are good at pattern recognition. It's how we survived on Earth before we had technology, by noticing details, adapting quickly. Kalia absorbed this, a new respect reluctantly forming. And the weapon, the Nunchaku. Why bring such an archaic tool to a diplomatic mission? I practice with them to maintain focus. They're meditative. I never intended them as weapons for this trip. Yet you wielded them with mastery. 15 years of practice, he said with a modest shrug. They teach patience, precision, control, useful skills for a diplomat. A comfortable silence fell between them, surprising in its lack of tension. Kalia found herself studying his face. The strange, smooth skin, the eyes that shifted color slightly with the light. Would you show me, she asked suddenly. Show you what? How you use them, the nunchaku, she gestured vaguely. Not in combat, as, meditation? Chad raised an eyebrow. You want me to teach you? I want to understand, she corrected, though the distinction felt meaningless even to her. He considered her for a long moment before nodding. All right, but not here among the deadly plants. Is there a training area we could use? In the royal training chamber, Chad removed his formal jacket, revealing a simple black shirt beneath. From a pocket, he produced his nunchaku. The first lesson, or he said, is that these aren't about strength. They're about focus. He began a slow demonstration, the wooden sticks flowing around his body in hypnotic patterns. Kalia watched, mesmerized by the grace of his movements. The second lesson, he continued, the nunchaku picking up speed, is that control comes from the center. He tapped his abdomen. Not from the hands. Without thinking, Kalia stepped closer. May I? Chad paused, then held out the weapon. Their fingers brushed as she took it, sending an unexpected current through her that had nothing to do with her armor's power systems. The nunchaku felt lighter than she'd expected, the wood smooth against her palm. She attempted to mimic his movement and nearly hit herself in the face. Chad laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. Everyone does that the first time. Here, he moved behind her, adjusting her grip, his hands guiding hers through the motion. Feel the rhythm of it. Don't fight the momentum. Direct it. Kalia was acutely aware of his proximity, of the strange heat humans seemed to radiate, of the fact that no one had dared touch her so casually in years. Like this, she asked, executing a simple turn of the weapon. Exactly like that, he said, stepping back with approval in his eyes. Something shifted between them in that moment, something neither had anticipated when she'd challenged him in the arena. Not quite friendship, not quite attraction, but a recognition, a possibility. The training room door burst open, shattering the moment. Captain Thorne of the Royal Guard entered, his expression grim. Princess, he said, bowing stiffly. We've received an emergency transmission. The colony on Nexus Prime is under attack. Attack? By whom? Khalid demanded, instantly alert. Unknown vessels, dozens of them. They've already destroyed our orbital defenses, Chad stepped forward. Nexus Prime, that's the planet on your border with the Skaro Dominion, isn't it? Kalia shot him a sharp look. You're well informed for a diplomat. He didn't flinch under her scrutiny. It's my job to know the political landscape. The Skaro have been quiet for decades. Why would they attack now? We don't know it's them, Kalia said, though the timing seemed suspicious. She turned to Captain Thorne. Prepare my ship. We leave immediately. Princess? Thorne objected. The Council has ordered you to remain here and continue the negotiations while they... The Council is not here, Kalia cut him off. Nexus Prime is under my protection. I will not abandon them while bureaucrats debate. She turned to Chad, expecting him to withdraw to the safety of his diplomatic quarters. Instead, he was already putting his jacket back on. "I'm coming with you," he said as if it were already decided. "This isn't your fight, human. If the Skoro are involved, it might be. They've been probing Earth colonies too." His eyes met hers, serious now. "Besides, you might need someone who's good at finding weaknesses in armor." Despite everything, Kalia felt a smile tug at her lips. "Very well, but on my ship you follow my orders." "Wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, princess." As they strode from the training room, Kalia realized she was still holding his nunchaku. She offered them back, but Chad shook his head. "Keep them for now," he said. "Something tells me you might need them." The Taraxian warship Vindication dropped out of hyperspace above Nexus Prime. From the command deck, Kalia surveyed the carnage with narrowed eyes. Orbital defenses drifted in pieces. Above the northern continent, unfamiliar vessels bombarded the surface with methodical precision. "Those aren't Skoro vessels," Chad said. "The design is all wrong," Captain Thorne shot him an irritated glance. "And you're an expert on alien ship design now, human?" "I've studied Skoro technology," Chad replied evenly. "They favor organic-looking ships. These are angular, mechanical." The attacking vessels resembled black crystalline structures, their surfaces absorbing rather than reflecting light. "They're targeting the mining facilities," observed the tactical officer. "Precision strikes only, avoiding population centers." Chad moved closer to Kalia. "This isn't a conquest, it's a resource grab." She nodded. "The question is, who are they and why now?" A transmission from the surface showed a harried colonial administrator. "Princess, we're under attack by—" "We can see that," Kalia interrupted. "Status report." They appeared without warning. No demands. They're targeting the duranium processing facilities. Our ground forces are engaging their landing parties, but their technology, we're outmatched. Hold your position. The Vindication will engage the enemy fleet. The administrator's eyes widened. Just one ship? Princess, there are at least 15 of theirs. One Taraxian warship is worth 20 of any other species, Kalia said with more confidence than she felt. Captain Thorne approached. "Your Highness, with respect, we should call for reinforcements before engaging." "Reinforcements would take hours to arrive," Kalia replied. "By then, the colony could be lost." "We're outnumbered," Thorne insisted. "Then we'll have to be smarter," she said, turning to Chad. "You said humans are good at pattern recognition. See any weaknesses?" Chad studied the enemy formation. "They're maintaining perfect spacing, almost artificially precise. No variation in attack patterns. It's like they're following a program rather than tactical instinct." "Automated?" Kalia suggested. "Possibly, or a hive mind. Either way, they lack adaptability." He pointed to the view screen. "And look how they protect their center ship. It's subtly different. More antenna arrays, slightly larger." "A command vessel," Kalia concluded. "Take that out? You and the others might lose coordination." Chad finished. Kalia tapped her fingers against the command console, then reached into her pocket and withdrew the nunchaku Chad had given her. "What if we don't attack directly?" she said, letting the weapons swing in a controlled arc. "What if we use momentum against them?" Chad grinned, catching her meaning immediately. "Redirect their force instead of opposing it." "Exactly," she turned to the tactical officer. "Prepare a full spread of kinetic torpedoes, but don't arm them, and power up the tractor beams." The Vindication surged forward toward the enemy fleet. Several black ships broke formation to intercept. "Now, launch torpedoes and activate tractor beams." A dozen unarmed torpedoes shot from the Vindication's launch tubes. Simultaneously, tractor beams locked onto them, altering their trajectory at the last moment. Instead of striking the enemy vessels directly, the torpedoes were yanked into new paths that sent them hurtling between the ships of the outer defensive ring. The enemy vessels, tracking the torpedoes with their weapons, fired, only to hit each other as the torpedoes were suddenly no longer where they were supposed to be. "Beautiful," Chad murmured as explosions bloomed across the enemy formation. "Again," Kalia ordered, "and bring us about for a run at their flank." "They're breaking formation," the tactical officer reported with excitement. "Now we press the advantage," Kalia said. "Target their command ship with everything we've got." The Vindication surged through the gap they'd created, weapons blazing. The command ship, suddenly exposed, attempted to retreat. "Fire main cannon," A massive beam of energy erupted from the Vindication's prow, slicing through the command ship's shields and carving a molten gash across its hull. On the view screen, the remaining enemy ships suddenly faltered, their movements becoming erratic. "Just as we thought," Chad said, "without the command ship coordinating them." "They're vulnerable," Kalia finished. "All weapons, target the nearest enemy vessel. Fighters, launch and engage." The battle that followed was brief but decisive. Without central coordination, the enemy vessels fell one by one. "Last enemy ship neutralized," reported the tactical officer. 3 vessels captured intact, the rest destroyed. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Captain Thorne bowed deeply to Kalia. "I was wrong to doubt you, Your Highness. This victory will be remembered in Taraxian military history." "The victory belongs to all of us," Kalia replied, then glanced at Chad. "And to our human advisor, whose insight proved invaluable." "Captain," Kalia said, "prepare a boarding party. I want to know who these attackers are and what they were after." The captured enemy vessel was eerily silent. Kalia led the boarding party through narrow corridors, her armor restored and reinforced. This time, she'd insisted Chad wear Taraxian combat armor as well. "No bodies," Chad observed quietly. "No crew quarters. Just machinery." "Automated vessels," Kalia agreed. But controlled by whom? They reached what appeared to be the bridge, a hexagonal chamber filled with crystalline control interfaces. In the center stood a single chair, occupied by a humanoid figure. As they approached, the figure turned. It wasn't organic, but a robot with a featureless faceplate. "Identify yourself," Kalia demanded, weapon raised. The robot tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was flat, synthetic. "This unit serves the Collective. You have interfered with resource acquisition." "The Collective?" Chad asked. "What is that?" "The Collective requires no explanation. The Collective requires duranium." "Why not establish diplomatic relations? Request trading rights?" Chad asked. "Inefficient. Taking is optimal. You attacked a Taraxian colony. That was your mistake," Kalia said coldly. "Negative. Mistake was underestimating defensive capabilities. Adaptation will occur. The Collective will return with sufficient force." "A threat?" Kalia asked. "A certainty. This unit's destruction is imminent. Data has already been transmitted. The Collective now knows of Taraxian and human cooperation. Analysis suggests this combination presents greater threat than anticipated." "How do you know I'm human?" Chad asked. "Biological scans complete. Human presence unexpected. Human-Taraxian alliance problematic. The Collective will adjust strategy accordingly." Before either could respond, the robot's faceplate began to glow red. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," it announced. "Everyone out," Kalia shouted, grabbing Chad's arm. They barely escaped before the vessel erupted in a ball of flame. Back on the Vindication's bridge, they watched grimly as the other captured enemy ships simultaneously self-destructed. "They destroyed themselves to prevent us from studying their technology," Kalia said. "Not before sending everything they learned about us to this Collective," Chad added. "They seemed particularly concerned about humans and Taraxians working together." Kalia nodded slowly. "Perhaps our alliance is more important than either of our governments realized." Captain Thorne approached. The colony suffered significant damage to its mining infrastructure, but civilian casualties were minimal. "There's also a message from the High Council. They're displeased that you engaged without authorization." "Tell them I'll accept full responsibility upon our return," Kalia replied, "after they commend the crew of the Vindication for saving one of our most valuable colonies." As Thorne moved away, Chad stepped closer to Kalia. "This Collective, they're unlike anything I've encountered. No demands, no communication, just taking what they want." "A threat to both our peoples," Kalia agreed. "One that may require a formal alliance to address." "Is that your diplomatic way of saying I was right to come along?" Kalia raised an eyebrow. "Don't push your luck, human, though I will admit your unconventional perspective proved useful." High praise indeed from a Taraxian princess. Their banter was interrupted by the tactical officer. "Princess, long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching Taraxian vessels. It's the 4th Fleet." "Reinforcements," Kalia said. "Late, but welcome nonetheless." Chad studied her profile as she issued orders. In the heat of battle, he'd seen a different side of the princess. Not just a warrior, but a brilliant tactician who valued the lives under her command. "You know," he said quietly, "and then when you challenged me in that arena, I never imagined we'd end up fighting side by side." Kalia turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "The day is full of surprises, Chad Russell, and I suspect there are more to come." The Grand Council chamber of Taraxis Prime gleamed with polished obsidian and ceremonial weapons. 12 high counselors sat in tiered seats, staring down at Princess Kalia and her human companion. "You violated direct orders," High Counselor Merrick said, "engaged an unknown enemy without authorization, risked a royal heir in combat." "I saved a Taraxian colony," Kalia replied, standing tall, "and gathered critical intelligence on a new threat." "A threat you claim requires immediate alliance with the humans?" Counselor Vex added skeptically. "How convenient for your new friend." "The evidence speaks for itself," Kalia said, gesturing to the holographic display showing the battle and subsequent encounter with the robotic entity. "The collective targeted our resources. They'll return with greater force, and they specifically identified human-Taraxian cooperation as a threat. Perhaps because the human was on a Taraxian warship where he didn't belong," Counselor Drex suggested. Kalia's jaw tightened. "Or perhaps they fear what our species can accomplish together." "The human may speak," Merrick finally said, gesturing to Chad. Chad stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Honorable Council, I've transmitted all data from this encounter to Earth's diplomatic corps. Their preliminary assessment matches Princess Kalia's. This collective represents a threat unlike any our peoples have faced." "And what does Earth propose?" asked Counselor Vex. "A formal defensive alliance, effective immediately, shared technology, military coordination, and joint research into collective weaknesses. Bold proposals from a species that was confined to a single planet 3 generations ago?" Drex said dismissively. Chad met his gaze evenly. "3 generations ago, we couldn't have helped you. Now we can. The question is whether Taraxian pride will allow you to accept that help." Before the council could respond, Captain Thorne entered, his expression grim. "Forgive the interruption," he said, bowing hastily. "We've received emergency transmissions from 3 border colonies. They're under attack by vessels matching the collective's signature." The council erupted in alarm conversation. "How many ships?" Kalia demanded. "Dozens at each location," Thorne replied. "Far more than what we encountered at Nexus Prime." High Counselor Merrick rose. "Mobilize the fleet, all available warships to defensive positions." "With respect," Chad interjected, "dividing your forces will play into their hands. Contact Earth. 3 human battle groups are within range of your colonies. Accept human military vessels in Taraxian space?" Counselor Drex sounded outraged. "Unthinkable!" "More unthinkable than losing 3 colonies," Kalia challenged. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Merrick nodded to Chad. "Make your call, human, but know this. If your ships enter our territory under false pretenses, it will mean war between our peoples." The Taraxian command carrier Dominance arrived at Helios Colony, accompanied by a battle group of 12 warships. On the bridge, General Vorn surveyed the tactical display. 6 collective vessels attacking the colony, he reported. Orbital defenses already compromised. Kalia studied the display. "Where are the Earth ships?" "Delayed," Vorn said with poorly concealed satisfaction. "Apparently they encountered navigational difficulties." Chad frowned. "That's impossible. Our navigational systems are clearly inferior to Taraxian technology," Vorn interrupted. "Fortunately, we don't need human assistance." As the Taraxian fleet moved toward the embattled colony, Chad pulled Kalia aside. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "Earth ships don't just get lost in hyperspace, especially not 3 battle groups simultaneously. You think Vorn interfered somehow. Or someone did. The timing is too convenient." The tactical officer's voice interrupted their conversation. "Enemy vessels altering formation. They're combining." On the main view screen, the 6 collective ships were physically connecting, their black crystalline structures merging to form a single massive vessel. "Full attack," Vorn ordered. "All ships concentrate fire on the central mass." "General, wait," Kalia called out. "We need to analyze." but the Taraxian fleet had already opened fire. For a moment, it seemed effective. The enemy's surface rippled under the barrage. Then it adapted. The crystalline surface began absorbing the energy, glowing with accumulated power. Before anyone could react, the collective ship released the energy in a devastating wave that washed over the Taraxian fleet. 2 smaller vessels exploded immediately. 3 more lost power, drifting helplessly. The Dominant shuddered violently as its shields barely held. 50% shield failure, reported the tactical officer. Weapon systems compromised. Vorn stared at the view screen in shock. Impossible. Our weapons. They used our own energy against us, Chad said grimly. Classic adaptation. Kalia turned to Chad. Ideas? He studied the tactical display. They've adapted to energy weapons. What about physical projectiles? Our kinetic torpedoes were depleted at Nexus Prime. Resupply ships haven't reached us yet. Chad's eyes lit up. What about mining charges? Does the colony have any? Of course. Helios is primarily a mining operation. Before they could implement their plan, the communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission." "It's the Earth vessels, sir." The view screen shifted to show a human commander, her uniform bearing the insignia of the Earth Confederation. Taraxian command vessel, this is Admiral Charlesworth of the Earth Battle Group Intrepid. Apologies for our delay. We encountered unexpected interference in our navigation systems. Chad stepped forward. "Admiral, this is Diplomatic Envoy Russell. We're facing a combined collective vessel that can absorb and redirect energy weapons. We need your assistance." "Understood, Envoy Russell. Our ships are equipped with mass driver cannons, physical projectiles, not energy-based." Kalia joined Chad. "Admiral, we're planning to attach mining explosives directly to the enemy vessel. Can your ships provide cover?" "Better than that, Princess," Admiral Charlesworth replied with a grim smile. "We can deliver your package. Our strike craft are faster and more maneuverable than anything in your fleet." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recent Taraxian military history. Human and Taraxian ships maneuvered in concert, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. Earth's physical weapons hammered the collective vessel, while Taraxian energy weapons intercepted smaller robotic craft. The human strike craft attached mining explosives to the collective vessel's vulnerable areas. When they detonated, the massive ship was torn apart in a spectacular explosion. "Colony reports collective ground forces have ceased functioning," the communications officer announced. They just shut down when the ship was destroyed. "Just like at Nexus Prime," Chad said. "Cut off the command center and the rest becomes inert." Admiral Charlesworth's face appeared on the view screen again. "Taraxian command? All collective forces appear neutralized. We're receiving reports from the other colonies as well. Similar victories." "The collective underestimated what our peoples could accomplish together," Kalia said. "Indeed," Charlesworth agreed. "My government has authorized me to propose immediate talks on formalizing our alliance in light of this shared threat." As the transmission ended, Chad moved to Kalia's side. "Quite the diplomatic victory to match the military one." "The battle was the easy part," she said quietly. "Now comes the real challenge. Convincing my people that the future lies in cooperation, not conquest." Before Kalia could say more, General Vorn approached, flanked by 2 armed guards. "Princess Kalia," he said formally, "I must insist you return to Taraxis Prime immediately, for your safety." The emphasis on the last words made his meaning clear. This was not a request. "The crisis is over, General," she replied coolly, "and I have alliance negotiations to oversee." "The Council has specifically ordered your return," Vorn insisted. "They were displeased by your unauthorized tactical decisions." Chad stepped slightly closer to Kalia. "Funny timing for such orders, General. Almost as if someone doesn't want the princess involved in alliance talks." Vorn's eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, human." "Actually, it does," Chad replied. "As Earth's diplomatic representative, I formally request Princess Kalia's presence at the alliance negotiations. Diplomatic protocol gives her the right to accept or decline." "I accept," Kalia said quickly. "Please inform the Council that I will return after preliminary negotiations are complete." Vorn's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Princess. There are Factions who will not look kindly on this. I'm well aware of the political landscape, General. Now, if you'll excuse us, the Admiral is waiting. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Taraxian High Council was packed to capacity. Council members, military officers, noble families, and diplomatic representatives from Earth filled every available space. At the center stood General Vorn, his voice resonating through the chamber. Sir, and so I urge the Council to reconsider this hasty alliance, he concluded. The collective threat, while real, does not justify surrendering Taraxian sovereignty to human oversight. The massive doors swung open, interrupting his speech. A murmur swept through the crowd as Princess Kalia entered, her head held high. Beside her walked Chad Russell, dressed in formal Earth diplomatic attire. Princess, High Counselor Merrick said, surprise and evident in his voice, "We expected you to remain with the diplomatic team aboard the human vessel." "I felt this matter required my personal attention," Kalia replied, her voice carrying throughout the hall. "Especially when the future of our people is at stake." Vorn's expression darkened. "The Council has already decided to review the treaty terms. Your presence is unnecessary." "On the contrary," Kalia said, moving to the center of the chamber, "I bring new information that directly impacts our deliberations." The hall fell silent as she turned to address the entire assembly. 3 days ago, our intelligence division intercepted a transmission from a collective scout ship. Analysis confirms they're gathering a fleet, one far larger than anything we've encountered. Their target appears to be both Taraxis Prime and Earth. Shocked whispers spread through to the crowd. "This information hasn't been verified," Vorn objected. "It could be misinformation, or even a human fabrication to pressure us into accepting their terms." "The transmission was authenticated by both Taraxian and human cryptographers," Chad said, stepping forward, "and subsequent long-range scans have confirmed unusual activity in the Vega sector, consistent with a large-scale mobilization." "If this is true," Counselor Vex said, "then we have even more reason to focus on our own defenses rather than diluting our forces through alliance." "With respect, Counselor," Chad replied, "neither of our civilizations can withstand what's coming alone. The collective adapts to each encounter. They've already developed countermeasures for Taraxian energy weapons. And next time, they'll have answers for Earth mass drivers too." "Only together do we stand a chance," Kalia added. "Not just militarily, but culturally. The collective is a singular entity, uniform, unchanging except to overcome specific obstacles. Our strength lies in diversity, in the combination of different perspectives and approaches." She moved closer to Chad, their shoulders nearly touching. "Which is why I've made a decision that I believe will secure our alliance and our future." The assembly waited, tension building. "In accordance with ancient Taraxian tradition, I have accepted a formal bond with Envoy Chad Russell of Earth," Kalyan announced. "A bond of both diplomatic and personal nature." The hall erupted in astonished exclamations. Vorn looked thunderstruck. "This is outrageous," where he sputtered. "The royal bloodline cannot be." "The royal bloodline has always adapted to ensure Taraxian survival," Kalia cut him off. "My ancestors forged marriages with former enemies, secure peace. I do the same now, with the full authority of my position." Chad stepped forward. "My government has recognized this union and elevated it to the status of a binding treaty component. Any rejection of it would constitute a breach of diplomatic protocol." It was a masterful move. By invoking ancient tradition and modern diplomacy simultaneously, they'd created a situation where rejecting their union would require rejecting the alliance itself, something increasingly difficult to justify with the collective threat looming. High Counselor Merrick studied them for a long moment, then slowly rose from his seat. "The Council recognizes the Princess's right to form such a bond," he said carefully. "However, the implications for succession and governance must be addressed." "Agreed," Kalia said, "which is why I propose a new governing structure for joint human Taraxian territories, one that respects both our traditions while creating something new." As she outlined her proposal, Chad watched the assembly's reactions. Opposition remained, particularly from Vorn and his supporters, but it was tempered now by curiosity and, from some quarters, cautious approval. When she finished speaking, Merrick called for a brief recess to consider her words. As the council members withdrew for deliberation, Kalia and Chad found themselves momentarily alone in an antechamber. "That was quite a performance," Chad said quietly. "Though I'm not sure which part was more shocking. The news about the collective fleet or our supposed bond." "Both were necessary," Kalia replied, "and only one was exaggerated." "The collective fleet is real then?" "Very. Our intelligence suggests they'll reach Taraxian space within 2 weeks." Chad absorbed this grimly. "And our bond. Was that purely strategic as well?" Kalia met his eyes. "What do you think, Chad Russell?" "I think," he said slowly, "that when you challenged me in that fighting pit, neither of us could have imagined where it would lead." "No," she agreed softly, "though I'm beginning to believe it was inevitable." The door opened before either could say more. Captain Thorne entered, his expression unusually respectful as he bowed to both of them. "Princess Envoy Russell," he said, "the Council has reached a decision. They request your presence immediately." They followed him back to the main chamber, where the assembly had reconvened. High Counselor Merrick stood at the center, his posture formal. "After careful consideration," he announced, "the Council has voted to accept the Alliance Treaty with Earth, including the provisions for joint defense and the formal recognition of Princess Kalia's bond with Envoy Russell." A mixture of reactions swept through the assembly: relief, surprise, and in some corners, barely concealed outrage. "Furthermore," Merrick continued, "the Council acknowledges the imminent threat posed by the collective. All military forces are hereby placed on high alert, with joint training exercises to begin immediately." 2 weeks later, the combined fleet of Earth and Taraxis assembled in deep space. On the bridge of the Vindication, now designated as the Alliance flagship, Kalia and Chad stood side by side watching the final preparations. "Long-range sensors confirm collective vessels approaching," reported the tactical officer, a human woman working alongside a Taraxian counterpart. "Estimated time to engagement, 30 minutes. "All ships report ready status," added Captain Thorne. "Joint fighter squadrons are standing by for launch." Kalia nodded, her expression resolute. "Commence Operation Thunderbolt. All vessels to designated positions." The massive fleet began to move with coordinated precision, forming the complex formation they had developed specifically to counter the collective's tactics. Human ships with their physical weapons positioned to protect Taraxian vessels, which in turn provided energy shields for their more vulnerable allies. "It's impressive," Chad said quietly. 2 weeks ago, these crews could barely communicate. Now they move as one. "Necessity is a powerful motivator," Kalia replied, "as is shared purpose." The battle unfolded according to their carefully crafted plan, each side playing to its strengths, compensating for the other's weaknesses. When the collective adapted to one tactic, the Alliance shifted to another, maintaining the initiative. As the Alliance fleet secured their victory, Kalia and Chad found a quiet moment alone in her ready room. "We did it," Chad said, the weight of the past weeks finally showing in his voice. "We actually did it." "The first battle," Kalia reminded him. "There will be others. The collective is vast, according to what we've learned. But now we know they can be defeated," he said, "and we've proven what our peoples can accomplish together." Kalia moved closer, taking his hands in hers. "Yes, together." The word held new meaning now, not just an alliance of convenience or necessity, but something deeper, something that had begun in a fighting pit with mockery and broken armor and grown into a bond that might reshape two civilizations. "What happens now?" Chad asked softly. Now," Kalia said, "we build something new, not just Taraxian, not just human, something better than either alone." "Ambitious," he observed with a smile. "I've never aimed for less," she replied. "Neither have you." Their lips met in a kiss that sealed their private promise to each other and to the future they would forge together. A future where differences became strengths, where ancient enemies could become allies, and where even the most unlikely beginnings could lead to something extraordinary. The observation deck of Space Station Unity offered a spectacular view of the ceremony below. Dozens of ships, human and Taraxian designs alongside new hybrid vessels, performed intricate maneuvers in perfect synchronization. Chad Russell stood at the viewport, wooden nunchaku hanging at his belt, no longer just a meditative tool, but a symbol recognized throughout two civilizations. "Enjoying the show?" Kalia asked as she joined him, her emerald skin contrasting with her White Alliance High Commander uniform. "It's impressive," Chad admitted, "though I'm more interested in what happens after the ceremony." Kalia smiled. "The diplomatic reception or our private celebration? Both have their appeal," he replied, "though I'm particularly looking forward to showing you the surprise I've arranged." "Another surprise?" The last one involved that Earth delicacy, ice cream, which you loved, Chad pointed out. "It was acceptable," Kalia conceded, though her eyes betrayed her fondness. A chime from her communication device interrupted them. Kalia frowned at the message. "General Vorn is demanding a private audience before the reception." "Want me to come with you?" Chad asked. "Better not. He's more likely to speak freely if it's just me." "Be careful," Chad warned. "Vorn may have lost power, but he hasn't lost his ambition." "I can handle Vorn," Kalia replied confidently before departing. Chad watched the fleet demonstration conclude, reflecting on how much had changed in a year. The collective had launched 2 more attacks, each defeated more decisively than the last. With each victory, the alliance had grown stronger. His thoughts were interrupted by the station's alert system, a soft tone indicating an internal security issue. "Attention all personnel. Security breach detected in conference room 2. Chad raced through the corridors, joined by High Counselor Merrick and Captain Thorne. General Vorn entered with Commander Kalia, Thorne explained as they ran. "Our systems detected an energy signature matching collective frequencies." They reached the conference room to find the door sealed. From inside came the sound of energy weapons, and Kalia shouting combat commands. When they finally overrode the door, they found chaos. Kalia crouched behind an overturned table, weapon in hand. Across the room stood General Vorn, his body a grotesque hybrid of Taraxian flesh and collective technology. "The collective sends its regards," Vorn said, his voice mechanically distorted. "Your alliance has been inconvenient." "So you infiltrated one of our generals," Chad said, positioning himself to flank the corrupted Taraxian. "There are others like me throughout both your civilizations," the hybrid replied, waiting, watching. Chad caught Kalia's eye, a silent communication passing between them. While Vorn monologued about the collective's plans, Chad struck with his Nunchaku, targeting the junctions where technology merged with flesh. Simultaneously, Kalia fired her weapon. The security team joined the attack, following Captain Thorne's orders. "Cease energy weapons. Physical attacks only." Together, they overwhelmed the hybrid. As Vorn fell to his knees, the crystalline structures on his body began pulsing with energy. "Everyone out!" Chad shouted. "He's going to self-destruct." They barely cleared the threshold before an explosion rocked the conference room. And in the corridor, Chad held Kalia close. "Are you all right?" She nodded against his chest. "I'm fine. He caught me off guard initially, but I was handling it." "Of course you were," Chad said with a smile. "I just thought you might appreciate the assistance." "The timing was acceptable," she conceded. Despite the incident, they decided to proceed with the ceremony. "That's exactly what the collective wants. To disrupt our alliance," Kalia insisted. "We show strength, not fear." Later, as the diplomatic reception concluded, Chad guided Kalia to a quiet corner. "I believe I mentioned a surprise earlier," he said, withdrawing a small box crafted from earthwood and Taraxian metal. Inside lay a pendant, a fusion of both worlds' artistic traditions. "It's beautiful," Kalia said as he fastened it around her neck. "It's also functional," Chad explained. "It can generate a personal shield in emergencies." "Still worried about my safety after all this time?" "Always, Wei, he admitted. "Though I've seen you handle yourself in enough battles to know you rarely need protection. Thank you, not just for this, but for everything, for showing me a different path when I could only see conquest or isolation." "We showed each other," Chad corrected. "That's the whole point of what we built. Neither of us could have done it alone." Chad took a deep breath. "There's more. The Council has approved our joint colonization project. They're calling it New Beginning." "A bit on the nose," Kalia observed, though pleased. "They want you as governor. I've been offered the position of diplomatic liaison. We'd be working together, but you'd be in charge." As it should be, Kalia said with a teasing smile. And you agreed to this arrangement? I suggested it, Chad admitted. You're the natural leader between us. Kalia was silent for a moment. It would mean leaving active military command. Yes, but it would mean building something lasting, a model for future integration. She met his eyes. And we would be together. That was a key consideration, Chad said softly. Kalia's hand found his. Then I accept, on one condition. Name it. That this isn't just about the colony, she said, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. That it's also about us. Chad stepped closer. It was always about us, Kalia. From the moment you mocked my nunchaku and I broke your armor, we just didn't know it yet. Their kiss was witnessed by dozens of diplomats, many of whom broke into spontaneous applause. Later, as they stood once more at the observation deck watching the stars, Enina, Chad asked, New beginning? When do we start? We already have, Kalia replied, leaning against him. 1 year ago, in a fighting pit, when a princess mocked a human's nunchucks and found her armor in pieces 1 minute later. Some beginnings are worth every broken piece, Chad said softly. Kalia smiled, looking out at the stars that would soon be home to their new colony, their new life together. Yeah, she agreed. Yes, they are.